something she was here or something, or or something, yeah, that one. So I didn't, like, I need to know, like, because I've got meeting that night, so I need to know, like, what session to go to.
Good morning. I'm Orlando Williams, the Vice Chancellor of Workforce Development and Institutional Advancement at Delgado Community College. And these are my bodyguards. Actually, these are members of Louisiana Connect. These are also members of the Blanco Center, and each person is going to come and introduce themselves. I just want to say welcome to Delgado Community College. We are thrilled to host this event. We look forward to working with our partners. UNO, SUNO, the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission, the Blanco Center, Louisiana. We're all in this together, and so I'm going to turn it over now to our friends at the.
So I'm Thomas Tyler. I'm our Deputy Director for Connect LA. So that's the State Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity. I'm here with our Executive Director, Beneath Eingar, as well as our colleague, David Lehman. And we really just want to thank you all for joining us today. You know, what we're here to discuss is a pressing issue for, you know, not only our state, but our nation. I think this is the third or fourth meeting we've held like this, you know, throughout the states. We've been to Alexandria, we've been to Lake Charles, Lafayette. So we're really excited for the conversation today, and we just appreciate your time. I don't know if our friends at the Blanco Center or the Planning Commissions have anything to say to you all, but so I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and everything.
Sure. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Morris. I'm from the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission. I am the Economic Development Coordinator and Transportation Planner there. And I'll be with Arlanda for helping lead this today. So
Hi, I'm Julian Hartwell with the Blanco Center. I don't really have much else to add, but like I said, we've been doing these meetings all over the state, and we're just going to be helping moderate today. I think there's a moment during the presentation where we're going to be asking for your input, and we have an online form that you can fill out on your phone or on a laptop, but also we have paper copies. So we're just going to be helping moderate today, kind of in the backseat, but really excited to get all of your input today. So looking forward to it. And then I'm also here with Eric Mills from the Blanco Center too. So, everyone.
Thank you, Thomas, for the introduction. Thank you, Blanco Center and Planning Districts. Thank you all for being here. So why are we here? How did our journey begin? Well, our journey began in 2019 when the governor, John Bell Edwards, realized the need to connect all Louisianians to high-speed, affordable internet. This is a basic 21st century necessity, and 1.5 million Americans don't have this basic necessity. So what he did was he created the Bell Commission, which is the Broadband for Everybody in Louisiana Commission, to bring together stakeholders and identify key action items to connect all Louisianians by the year 2029. A few months later, the pandemic hit, and the state legislature realized the same need. They realized it because people needed access to telehealth. They needed access to telework opportunities. They needed to work. They needed, school children had to do their assignments online. They had to get their ebooks to study. So they created our office, a dedicated state office, to coordinate state, federal, and local resources so that we could solve this problem by the year 2029. Since then, we've allocated over 170 million coronavirus dollars from the Capital Projects Fund to fund Gumbo. Now, as we gear up for the next tranche of money, the $1 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law BEAD program, we want to be cognizant of digital equity. Why digital equity? Somebody, here, I'll use it. Thank you. Digital equity. Why digital equity? Because 17% of Louisianians don't have access to internet. This number gets higher when you count Louisianians who have, sure, they have access to internet, but it's slow or it's just not good service. Number rises more. 12% of Louisiana's school children can't do their homework. They don't have internet access or they don't have the necessary devices. 31% of census blocks in Louisiana only have satellite connections. 31% of Louisianians lack the basic skills to navigate online. So that's why digital equity is important. But what is digital equity? I'm going to pass it on to Elizabeth to define the 4 pillars of digital equity and carry on this conversation. Thank you.
So before, thank you, Dave. So before Elizabeth jumps in, as Thomas mentioned, Denise Diner and I run the broadband office. These next 2 hours are going to be really, really, really important. I need y'all to provide your honest, visceral thoughts, reactions, suggestions, solutions, problems over the next 2 hours, okay? Because as David said, as Thomas said, the engagement that we get from y'all, and it's not going to just stop here, and Elizabeth will talk about the different modalities that y'all can provide input, is going to be instrumental in how we frame the issue and how we're going to address it with all these federal funds we're receiving. We have to put together 2 different plans, and we have to put 2 different plans together and submit it to the feds by April of next year. First is a 5-year plan on how we're going to spend all of this $1 billion that we're going to receive from the infrastructure bill. And then we're going to put together the state, through this activity and others, state's first digital inclusion plan. We submit that to the feds, and the feds, if they say this makes sense, we like the approach, we like the feedback we get in terms of engagement, then they will say, here Louisiana, your broadband office is $25 million, to start executing them. So we want to sort of be first out of the gate to receive approval so we can then start to draw down those funds to start executing by Q3, Q4 of next year, so around this time. So really, please, I know y'all are not bashful people, okay? Please do not be bashful. I know it's Friday morning, and you know, we'll get a little bit warmer here, right, in this room. But please spend the next couple of hours listening to Elizabeth in terms of how we're framing digital equity, and also start answering these questions. Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, so digital equity 101. Why are we going to talk about why we're here? What is digital equity? Digital equity is as a table with 4 key elements. It is a condition in which all individuals and communities have information technology capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. So it's not just about do they have access to internet, it's also do they have access to the devices that are internet enabled? Are the applications and services and internet accessible? And is it designed and encouraged to have self-sufficiency and participation and collaboration? And then also, do people have the digital skills, the digital literacy to understand how to work these things? And is it delivered in a culturally competent context? So if you don't have one of these 4 things, don't really have digital equity. So that's what we're training for that. So digital equity is really like closing the digital divide, which is the gap between those who have affordable access, skills, and support to effectively engage online and those who don't. The digital divide hinders equal participation and opportunity in all aspects of life, and it disproportionately affects people of color, which 38.8% of Louisianans are not white, indigenous people, low-income households, people with disabilities, older adults, and rural areas. And now I'm going to throw it over to our question. Will y'all be sharing the slide deck with us so we don't have to write down?
So yeah, don't worry, sorry, I'm speaking from that. Don't worry about the slides. We need your brain power when we start to go through these questions.
So what's our why? Why are we doing this? Why do we have you in this freezing cold room on a Friday? Why is the debating for your brain power?
Yes,
We need
thank you.
you. We all need to do this together. And one of the main reasons is to improve the lives of Louisiana residents. If we learned nothing through the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we learned our flaws, right? And one of them was the digital divide. And so this plan is going to help address the barriers to digital equity faced by our state's population, as Elizabeth just described. It's going to help us to secure federal funding to achieve digital equity and to improve the current broadband infrastructure. It is going to help us to coordinate engage partners, which include the Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity, the Board of Regents, university partners, regional planning commissions, and other community-based organizations with a shared vision of digital equity. And so our regional partnerships, of course, are colleges and universities, our regional planning commissions, there's 8 of them. Our meetings, these meetings are going to kick off, have kicked off across the state. I think we're the second to host, or are we the third? Third to host. We're going to introduce all of our stakeholder agencies and organizations to process and to begin to collect input on brain power, as we described earlier. And then all of our partners and stakeholder agencies and organizations and individuals are going to be asked to take this message and carry it and pass it forward. And so we're going to be collecting information through our online form. And so it's going to require, like I said earlier, help from everyone. And so outreach will require collaboration with diverse stakeholders. So your state agencies, your nonprofit agencies, workforce development programs, higher ed, your public housing. And I don't know if you can remember, I think it was 2008, there was Connect America. And Connect America used the top internet services or utility providers to offer discounted services at $9.95 a month for those that were qualified. And so this to me is just expanding the footprint to make sure that more people are connected, and it gives our children a level playing field. And so that's the side of me that's leaning towards students, but we produce successful students and we produce a successful economy. And so these are all of the stakeholders. And this is the time frame. So this is also like it It's a working draft. We're going to analyze the data and build the framework. The stakeholder engagement portion is where we are now. We're going to do the feedback. The Blanco Center is going to analyze it, draft the plan, and then ratify the plan in April of 2023. So it's not that far away. And so everyone has to have and does have a seat at the table. So now everyone should have a pen and a paper to start writing the vision. And I will turn it over to Elizabeth.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about some baseline digital equity data. The state is developing a digital equity dashboard to track progress over time. So I'm going to go through a few things that will kind of show you some of the indicators that are still being built out, and it's going to grow over time. And we really want this to be a resource for the public, and so that y'all can come back and check out the links we have for more information in the future. So I'm going to be off the camera screen to start people online. So first, we are going to talk about internet access by income level. Okay. So this is the, so on the slide, there's a QR code and a link that you can click or take a picture.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you could go back to the previous slide too, the slides. Yeah, so if you type in bit.ly/LA Broadband on your phone now, or you brought a laptop or an iPad, you can access the survey that we're gonna do today. And then if you don't have a phone, or Kate and I also have some paper copies that we can collect as well. And we can test those out now. So just put your hand up if you want paper version. But we're encouraging people to the internet since we're in a digital equity meeting. Does anybody want to do it? We'll just do the online. Is the link working? Is the online?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
You have to make sure that everything is capitalized exactly correct too.
I got it. Are you ready to?
Say it.
Yeah,
Control million. You must.
Okay, so everyone's got that on your phone, you can see it. Okay, so here it is online. So we go down. So digital equity, internet access by income level. We have a great map. We are region 1, so that includes St. Tammany, Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, Plaquemines Parish, and St. Bernard Parish. And you can, if you want, you can click on any of the parishes to get more information that's very detailed. What's interesting down here is you can kind of look at the different information over time and also versus other areas. So the red is the United States. The orange is our region, and then the blue is Louisiana as a whole. So over time, more more households have been getting internet in our region, and we're doing better than Louisiana as a whole, but we're still underneath the U.S. Rate. And then if you want to go even deeper, it is broken out by the different parishes. So you can look at this is Claflin's parish. You can click on that and look at the different households for that. So overall, our region is trending upward, but we still have some room to grow. So then the next one we're going to look at is internet access and subscription types. Sorry, y'all, trying to. Okay. So again, you have different subscription types you can look at, some, and you can click on our different areas. If we go down here to, you can again look at the United States graph, Louisiana as a whole, and then our region. So again, we're trending upwards, still below the U.S. Rate, and then you can see we have some variations between our different parishes. Yeah, more time. And so you can also you can play around on this. I mean, it's kind of hard to present on this, but if you can click around, it's very interactive and you can get more in depth with the information. And then finally, we'll go back to the last one. Digital equity and internet access by age group. So this was really interesting to see the different age groups and what their access is to computers and internet devices. So again, kind of all together there's a little less variation between the U.S. Rate versus Louisiana and our region in the 18 and under age group. And then also again, there's some variation in our between parishes, but closer than the other ones.
Can you repeat the age range of this?
So this is under 18. And then you can also do 18 to 64, I believe.
Yeah.
And sorry, you may have said this, but has a computer, how is that defined by device?
So has a computer is
So it has a computer and some type of internet subscription.
The computer means like a family device, like
Yes.
either a laptop or a desktop or a tablet, not.
That's right.
yes. Yes.
What is the data source for this? Is this the census data or is this a separate survey?
I think all the data is the ACS.
It's the American Community Survey.
It's, so the census runs every 10 years. The American Community Survey is similar methods, but they do it pretty much every year for a smaller group of people. Yeah.
So the bottom line here is, look, this is something you could use and use for your own benefit. But the bottom line is we have a device issue. That's and so you have hundreds of thousands of people that have no devices. You have 460,000 people in Louisiana that lack digital skills, and it goes on and on. So.
You said that much.
One thing to keep in mind also, no, sorry,
No, you're fine. You're good.
so David had mentioned 1.5 million folks, really 1.5 million folks in Louisiana that don't have access to internet. Even though the state's population is 30% African American, the number of folks of that 1.5 million that are not connected, 47% of those folks are either African American or Latino. So even though state's population is 38% minority, the issues are much more, right, in terms of disproportionately impacting folks of color. So again, when we think about inclusion and opportunity and equity, that's what we're trying to solve is. All of this stuff is going to be a busted and wasted investment if we don't get people to use it for the benefit of their families and their community.
I think the problem has been, and just way back in studies, and I shared this with you before, is that African American, mostly African American, have this. But when you go home, there's no access to internet, there's no internet services. And so it puts some students at a disadvantage, which causes students to come to school and you're embarrassed to say, I don't have internet, so they act out. And then you have the other issues that arise from that. And so I think one of the main things to see would be more education about why it's important to have internet services in your home, because of the fact that
You're answering question number 7. Okay, but one thing, so you mentioned, right? So folks that don't have internet connectivity at home will largely have a cell phone. We were driving this morning from Baton Rouge to New Orleans near La Paz. Someone called us and the phone dropped. So it's not just a fixed internet situation and challenge at home, but it's a wireless situation too.
And for some reason, we always get calls.
And we get calls. I mean, it's frankly ridiculous. We're driving on I-10 between two big cities, and you can't get cell connectivity. We were driving on I-49 just a mile from the Natchitoches exit, 138. There's no cell connectivity. So to your point, even for folks that are trying to use their cell phone to do a lot of things, there is still a significant shortage of wireless cellular infrastructure in the state of Louisiana that we have to solve.
Can I bring something?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, go.
From the New Orleans Public Library, we often have families who are trying to access Wi-Fi at night after the closure of the library. And I also want to say fast food restaurants are probably another haven for people who need to access Wi-Fi. And so then there's the whole health issue that comes up. I think we're a think tank here, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's a good point, because we talk about how areas that it affects you, the digital equity issue, but you brought up health, and that's a whole nother equity issue. And so are we feeding into that by not taking care of this problem, and could it help to alleviate? Because you're right, if I could get free Wi-Fi at Popeye, I'm gonna go eat 2 pieces of chicken, no, I'm not supposed to have that, right? And so then we have a whole nother.
It's sort of tough to resist. But I get it though, right?
Right.
If I get, like, I can get homework done, but I get them.
Because it's really happening though.
Okay, so we invite you to kind of play around on that, get some more information, come back and check it in the future as we continue to do more work. But now we want to know what y'all have to say. And Orlando's gonna come up and help me. So, our first question is,
And before she starts,
Yes.
I know we told you to go to the site, but if you want to come up and just scan it, you can do the, we're at a digital equity place, right? I just scanned it and did the, and did the survey on my phone.
Yes, if you like zoom in a little bit on your phone, you can kind of capture it too. Sounding very millennial right now. Or you can go stand in front of it. Or you can type in the bit.ly, LA Digital Equity. We now know that uppercase matters. And if none of that works, we have some of these in paper in the back with some text. So.
I guess the first question is, does your city, parish, region have existing programs or programs in development aimed specifically at addressing digital equity issues?
We're Jefferson Parish Library. My name is Ricardo Babineaux. Good morning. So we're in the middle of a pilot to push a digital equity and digital inclusion, digital literacy project at the library. And it's going pretty good so far. We're seeing a lot of issues that are getting addressed, such as the digital literacy component. But one of the things that I'm seeing is it's just like getting the information out, marketing the information, coordination, collaboration, centralized districts maybe, and getting that information across to everybody, to at least our community and surrounding communities, at least in District 3. So that's been a big thing for me. We're heavily marketing the Latino and Spanish community right now, and the disability community, to provide services to that area, and seniors. That's our next phase. But what I realize is that, people hear about the classes, but they don't really engage. So we're trying to find ways to engage those communities. And we're looking for partners and other community people that we can partner with dealing with the Catholic charities and other groups where senior centers and assisted living groups. It's been very difficult, but we've had a good bit of people attend our classes, so that's really good. Now, on the other side of digital equity is the internet access. And I've been, digital equity and digital inclusion is not new. Louisiana is behind. We're very behind. This is 10 years in the making. I've been pushing this issue at the library. We were one of the first libraries that checked out laptops to our patrons and hotspots. So, it is a funding issue, a money issue, and it's hard to fund those programs. But, this, like I said, this is nothing new. It's been around for a long time. We're just behind the state. Hopefully we can catch up to where nationally, especially like in the Northeast market. I have a lot of friends up Northeast. They're like so far beyond what we're doing down south. When I say the South region, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida's okay, but in Texas is okay, but they're still behind too.
So let's remove the funding part out of this, because we're gonna have enough federal funds.
Well,
So-
now I'm getting at that. That's my main point.
Right, so we'll have the funds to address a bunch of different issues, but I want to unpack what you said earlier. So you're having success in having people participate in these digital skills. Is
So
that
we're
correct?
putting a lot of man hours into marketing.
Okay, so I want to understand why has that been successful, and how are you reaching out? I mean, you said, and then in terms of the chat, so I want to understand the successes and how you're doing it, and then the challenges in terms of engagement.
Sure. So the Spanish community specifically, that was our first phase to attack the Spanish community. So we've been participating in all types of events, especially during Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yeah.
So we've been hitting it hard, hitting all the festivals, setting up our booth, communicating to the public, having that engagement. But the Spanish community is very fearful. We're going to turn over their information to Homeland Security, all of this type of stuff. You have to explain to them, and work through that. So we're looking for partners to and we've made some progress in that, where people that have those connections to the community are willing to work with the library to help bridge that gap, because they don't know who I am. I show up, like the FBI or something.
Right. So it's really trusted people.
Trusted people, you know,
So who do they trust?
the community groups, you know, these groups that I make contacts throughout these festivals. And I've met a few people and wrote the names down and said, hey, we're willing to come out and partner with you and volunteer our time to communicate this program to the public.
And then earlier you mentioned you've had successes in actually having people actually take, and you said it's required a ton of man hours. So walk me through that.
So we have a Spanish coordinator at the library. So we really have to call them, follow up, send information, tell them about the online system, demonstrate the system we're using the North Star, demonstrate that, you know, just a lot of talking. So it's you know, just getting them at a point where they feel comfortable to come in and see what it's about.
You're using your own money?
Well, we're part of a pilot where we're using the North Star system.
Okay.
But we were actually doing this prior to North Star. We had built our own program based off of a program from the state library that did like maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago. We built upon that. So we've been doing this for many years. The North Star is just sort of put everything together.
Thank you.
So really what I'm getting at, I want to mention, is the internet access. Because, you know, if it's true, people don't have internet access. They see after COVID, a lot more people, I've seen a decline in our computer usage. That means people have devices, maybe not necessarily internet access, they have to go places, or we're extending our footprint to get internet.
Right.
But our hotspot checkout has been extremely successful with a very low loss rate, which is surprising. So even if we looked at the Louisiana population size and maybe did like 20 or 30%, I know it's a large number, but you know, if you times that over 10 years and we worked, and somehow we were able to get a small cost of internet access on a device, if we're paying $19 now, you know, we had, you know, 20% or 30% of our population, and we got that number down to maybe $5 or $10 a device, you know, times 12 times 5, 60 months. You know, you're looking somewhere in the, I did the math, just to be messed up, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $72 million over 5 years. To me, that's a very, very low number to get internet access out to people. So, you know, we're spending billions of dollars on all kinds of stuff here in the United States and overseas. That's a whole nother issue. I mean, why don't we look at taking dollars and really doing something rather than just give lip service about, hey, this is what we're going to do. You know, let's talk about, I mean, I heard about programs in California where they're checking out Chromebooks or somewhere around the country, like 1,000 Chromebooks, and it's like lifetime checkout. So, I mean, those are successful, and we can gauge metrics on how the usage is happening. So that's my concern. We got to find ways to do that rather than, you know, the training's good, getting people to come into training. You know, I still think you're going to have problems with that because, you know, days and how you're scheduling and getting people to do it. You know, we have 6 people that are training right now. We turned our people into trainers. We have the digital navigators now that are taking over some of the training, but that's only a short-term fix. I think it's not a long-term fix.
I think we have time here, and then.
I was a lot on that. So.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just had an idea that I might want to flesh out more, but you know, I'll talk. I met with someone recently that might be. I'm good there.
Okay.
Anyway, I think I wanted to.
So in the back with the black turtle.
I'm Daphne, I'm with GMP, and part of my job deals with economic mobility. And the digital divide is a huge part of economic mobility. And I have 2 lenses that I'm looking at. First is the educator lens, we're talking about access to actual physical means of accessing the internet. But economically, just background, I live in Plaquemines Parish, and I live in Algebase. And I'm from Plaquemines, so from all the way down deep in Plaquemines, and part of the problem is actually having the wires, we call it fiber optics and everything. I think that is an issue that we may need to address, not only getting it done, but also having the people trained, especially with institutions like Delgado, they can have the people trained to actually lay these wires. And then I have been getting notifications that we will be getting fiber optics in Algiers since I moved in. I have since sold my house, and there is still not fiber optics in certain parts, especially where I lived at. And some streets had it, some streets didn't. In Plaquemines Parish, there is no option. And there are incredibly rural areas. And then, we live in the upper part of Belle Chase, which is, I hate to say it, but like a more upscale kind of area, and you still don't have options. We don't have the companies coming and investing in laying the infrastructure. And do we have the people to support that? And are they highly trained and ready to go to work? In order to do that, are we providing these companies with that talent? And is AT&T, Cox, are we getting enough people to come down here and invest in our areas? And I don't feel that we are, because there's a monopoly of some companies, and they can charge us whatever they want, especially for those, we can talk about those populations that are low income, but there are analyst populations who don't meet the requirements, and then there are people who, whether you meet the income requirement or not, that's still a bill of expense you have. And so if I don't have competition and one company is allowed to monopolize, how is that equitable across the board? So that's just.
And so that question came up about 13 years ago, and the same thought pattern. And Comcast was one, and then there was the litigation between Time Warner and some that demanded that they had to lay fiber, and they were mostly going in Black and brown communities. And so it was the expansion and implementation of broadband in these areas. And so you're right, that conversation needs to be brought to the forefront as well, because we are offering a fiber optic technician training and certification. And so the thing is to drive these companies, and they're willing to come, but to drive these companies, what other incentives are we going to give them? Because it is competitive, but how do we bring them here? How do we get them to connect? My first experience with this, I sat on the FCC's advisory board for the implementation and advancement of. And my first meeting, Louisiana sent back $89 million. That was in 2008, 2007. First meeting, so I was almost pretending like I wasn't from Louisiana, and I just, but I did what I had to do to get all the information. That was embarrassing, but it was simply because to me, even back then, people really didn't know, and so they just sent the money back. So, but it caused me to study more. So I was in Multnomah County, I was in Philadelphia, and Comcast was the leader on how to connect America. And here we are connecting Louisiana. Same thought, same conversation.
But we do need that. We need more students actually to be involved in the
Yeah.
training programs. We have the workers and we have the people. We can get the access, and then we can have the devices for them to do so. Because you can provide devices for students down in South Plaquemines, but if they don't have the actual internet speed, we waste our time.
You're right, and I sat on the Minority Technology Commission. It shows 65% of African American and Hispanic students have cell phones and don't have internet. I think you and then you.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm a digital literacy librarian for the New Orleans Public Library, and I kind of just wanted to piggyback on something that Bobby said. So in regards to what Ricardo said about getting the message out about the programs and services offered, we go old school. We will flyer in laundromats. We will go to RIC offices. My colleague and I, we will email flyers to faith-based organizations. Because a lot of the people, who we want to reach don't have the access. They don't know about it. So flyering is really, really helpful. We have one-on-one computer instruction. We have classes. We're partnering with the ARP for digital skills for people over 50. We have a wildly successful take-home tablet program, and it's getting the word out, by all different means. And piggybacking on something else that was said about people who are cell phone dependent, a lot of the things I see, we see people who come in and they are cell phone dependent, but they think that because they're proficient in using a cell phone, that they have digital skills, but
they don't translate to using a desktop or a laptop. They can't navigate a mouse. They can't, work with multiple tabs. So I think it's really important to address the perception that cell phone literacy is wholesale digital literacy.
Hey everybody, I'm Catherine from the City of New Orleans IT department, and I want to stress the importance of device accessibility, someone having a device. We've been lucky enough to be running this pilot, it's widely successful, where it's a laptop giveaway. And the numbers that we are seeing that we're up against is, New Orleans is 60% Black or brown people, much different than St. Tammany Parish. So we have a much larger disparity there. And so our needs are pretty great when it comes to providing families with laptops. We know that there's between 35 to 40% of the families in the city that don't have a device in them, any kind of, with a device being a computer or laptop, which has provides more of an experience digitally for the people. They learn a lot more. You place a computer in a home and everybody uses it. We know that it can uplift everybody. So the importance of having a device, cannot be underestimated. Our program, we run a lottery. If you do not have a device at the home, you can enter the lottery and you will pick names. And we had over 2,500 families sign up. Unfortunately, the number we're giving out is only 200 laptops. And these are refurbished laptops, but they're running Windows 10. They can get Wi-Fi. They are up to date. We've had anecdotally, people tell us that now I can apply to work this remote job because I have to have something that is Windows 10 or greater to apply for it and take the job. She had an old desktop with Windows 7 on it. And that just wasn't doing the trick. So I think we can really make a huge impact if we focus on giving laptops to our New Orleans families.
Erin?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Erin Landry. I'm the State Director of Adult Education with the Community Technical College System. And I'm super excited we're having this conversation because digital literacy is inextricably linked with literacy and numeracy outcomes, and we are last in the nation in all of those things. So 30% of our adult population has low literacy skills, 30% of our adult population has low digital literacy skills, 42% of our adult population has low math skills, right? And so when thinking about this question, do we have programming? Yes. All adult education programs, all one-stop WIOA centers should be engaged in digital literacy programming. Our libraries are at the front lines of this, but we really need to be able to pull these things together to provide robust options for digital resilience education.
So what role does employers have in this?
I think, first of all, they need to be able to navigate those resources and how to help. But I also think that employers should have digital navigators themselves to help folks skill up when, okay, this is how you're going to do interviews remotely, or this is where you can go if you need more intense instruction, or, it's really, you need to do an update on your software systems. People are legit afraid of technology, even if they have access to it, they think they're going to break it. And so having lots of different varieties of instructional spaces where we can teach people, like, this computer's not gonna blow up if you experiment, right? And, let's teach you how to Google, how to fix that. We need to provide folks with those spaces. They exist, we need to invest in them, and we need to build a network.
What about the faith-based community?
I think just like my friends at the New Orleans Library were saying, you have to make connections with them. I will say that adult education programs around the state, there are 22 of them, do have connections. Catholic Charities is one of them. Do have connections in those communities because we're already serving folks who are most in need. We're already working with faith-based organizations, like our faith-based organization. But yeah, it's an all hands on deck with everyone who serves folks who are at the edge.
Hi, I'm Tanya Babineaux with St. Tammany Parish Library. And we, when you look at that map and you see that we are the darker blue, when you zoom in and you really focus on St. Tammany, we're a lot like Blanco in that we have a huge rural area. So the whole top of that parish is more like Washington Parish. There is no fiber there. There is poverty there, both black and white. St. Tammany does not have public transportation. So we have libraries, small libraries in the rural communities in Folsom and Bush and Crow River, but you need a car to get to them. And then along the, in the south part of the parish, which is where the wealth is in Mandeville, but we do have income inequality. We have pockets of strong black communities in Covington and Macomb and Madisonville and in Slidell. And in some of those communities, there is a lot of income inequality. So that's what we're dealing with, where there may be the bandwidth in the south part of the parish, but people with some of those same issues. People might have a phone, but they can't afford the internet at their house. So we do have strong signals in our parking lots when our libraries are closed, people congregating in the parking lots. They keep it open until 9 o'clock. And it gets used almost as much as computer use inside the library. So we're happy about that. One thing that we're doing is we're just starting to talk to St. Tammany Health System, which is the hospital and their whole network, to try to help facilitate telemedicine, especially in our rural areas. So we're going to pilot a project in Bush where we have some tablets that they can access my chart and also have a kit with blood pressure machine and things like that, that the patient can do their testing at the library. So that's kind of where we are. Yes, we are a wealthy parish, but don't let those statistics mislead you that we have some very wealthy people who kind of balance all of that out. We have pockets of people. We have a lot of people, especially in the middle income community, filter that $20,000 to $75,000 a year. We've used some of the SEC maps to kind of map out our digital inequity, and that's when we really saw the inequities in the middle incomes where they don't qualify for programs, but they just, it's one more bill, and even a $200 Chromebook is still an expense. Well, yeah, it's still an expense. So that's where we are right now.
Sorry, going back to the end, yeah, I wanted that to tell you before I create it. This is just a very specific thing going back to how to reach Spanish-speaking people. I met recently with someone from corporate ideal market, and he's really passionate about workforce mobility and workforce development. Anyway, I just messaged him thinking if he'd be able to go to tables at ideal market. So maybe they'll have programs talking about that. Thank you.
So I'm Emily Fulton-Clay, and I'm here with Delgado Community College in professional development. And part of my job is thinking about digital training specifically for students here. I have 2 points to make. Number one, if funding really isn't an issue, then why aren't we talking about broadband access across the state that is free? I mean, if that's really, are we going big here, like big?
Yeah, the funny thing is,
Because let's just put this on the table. All the devices, all the training, all the applications in the world are not going to do anybody any good without the infrastructure to access the internet.
so,
And I can't get the internet without the funds needed to do that. And so,
okay, so
That
It goes
seems
back to
like
your
the worst part issue.
So we're gonna have enough federal funds to ensure that every unserved, unserved, and underserved in community and institution in Louisiana has access to high-speed, affordable, reliable.
Okay.
Okay, so the days of paying an outrageous sum for marginal divorce service is gonna go away with the federal funds that we administer. Because we've built in affordability in our program.
Is there data yet on affordability?
So when we say affordability, we're talking about,
I'm talking about the people that, the FCC, the program where you get 995. Is there any data on that yet?
so just really a couple of things. And I want to make sure we have another 6 questions. And then, so on the affordability, so really 2 things on the affordability. We have worked very closely with the Board of Regents, and all the agencies, and all of y'all to push out the Affordable Connectivity Program. We've had over 335,000 households already receive benefit from that program. That's the $30 a month off your broadband bill or $100 for the device. So on a per capita basis, we rank #1 in the country, which is good. People are adopting it. People are recognizing it. On the flip side, it also speaks to the size of that program, right? So homework assignment for all y'all is to continue to push that program. 46% of the population that could be eligible are actually getting benefit, which means there's still room for us for people to receive benefit. So that's one thing. Second thing, on our grant program with regards to affordability, the companies that apply for our 176 million, their price points are, $39, $49, $59. That's what they
Too much.
Now, if you stack that, so let's say, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to ensure that that household or that small business has access to something that they need. It's up to the consumer to pay for whatever they want to pay. So the idea is the challenge with broadband when the pandemic hit was always availability and reliability. So we're going to solve that problem. But just because I get someone fiber optics going to a house in Tensas Parish or a rural part of St. Tammany doesn't necessarily mean that consumer will want to pay for gig speeds. They want to say, look, I really don't have kids in the house. I only have one device. And I'm perfectly okay with paying $25, $20 a month to whoever. But if, God forbid, we get into another pandemic and the whole world shuts down again, and that person calls the phone to Comcast or whomever and says, look, I need gig speed tomorrow, Comcast, through our, or whomever, whomever, through our federal funds should not be able to say, oh, I don't think I can do it, blah, blah, blah. They should be able to say, okay, within 24 hours, you're going to get that. Yes.
The second question that kind of goes with what you're saying, if we can't go big, right, really big, then we're looking at access points or hubs or communities that would give them access to internet or devices for training and programming. When we talk about access points, some of the easy points would be libraries, obviously, and community colleges. But we need to think about what types of services are offered at these places so that we're drawing the right crowds to these.
Thus, you're going to have existing programs.
And so I'm not talking about training, I'm talking about housing for the unhoused. And I'm talking about career funding. And I'm talking about the things where people in need who are looking for resources go to seek those resources. So why can't we house those resources and institutions or programs here on community college campuses, here at libraries, so that people who are already coming to the resources are having access to be able to train up at a library or at an institution of learning. In addition to that, we've got to think about the way we present these hubs of access, because I really think we present them as illusions of access and not really accessible places. When we talk about no children allowed on campus or in a lab,
when we talk about closing library hours or Wi-Fi access hours, but my shift ends at 7, how is that helpful to me? And we can talk about parking lots till 10, but if we lock them up, how is that helpful to me?
I was on
And
point
so-
for 7, but still.
And so some places are doing better than others, but if we're gonna throw funds into this, I want us to think really carefully about how accessible these places or these hubs of access become to the people we're trying to reach. I saw in Jefferson Parish, for example, local library, great program, let's train you if you've got a digital divide. Advertise right there on their billboard as I pass by. Register online at Blanco. Ha! Are we missing our audience here? Maybe and when we talk about who we're listening to in this forum, a little bit of question. How many of you guys have had problems with digital access? We can all raise our hand a little bit. How about for a year or more? Because this isn't a momentary problem for these families. This is a long-term problem. I want to make sure that we're really digging into those communities to hear their voices and not just people who think they can solve the problems from the outside. That's an issue if this is about a community forum and we're looking around this room.
So I think also too, because we put it out to everybody, right? And so it's just what he said earlier. This is probably not even gonna sound correct, but you can give a person all that you want, but if they're not taking it, then we can't be held responsible for that.
But I had to register online as part of this process.
But you also have a cell phone that you could click some of the things. And then we did personal invites. We got on the phone and invited. I'm not taking up, I'm just saying that we have to look at it both ways. And so this, you're right, it's not momentary. This goes all the way back, way, way back. And things have started, but then you have to look at the mindsets. I think somebody said it best. I'm not giving you my information and then you can track me. So that's something too. That's a culture. That's a mindset. That's, I don't know, Beneath, if we all have enough brain power to overcome that, but that is a
It's
problem.
a grassroots issue. You have,
It's grassroots.
it takes staffing, it takes hours. And I've learned this because, I've been in the library for a long time. And I just kind of go through the motion, but now that I'm like really hands-on in these front areas, I'm like, man, this is hard work.
Right, in every community organization, every social and civic organization, and every church, because pastors reach more than we reach in this. Amy, I know you have, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just thinking, as we think about, affordability, we put barriers in place to people to approve affordability. So even under the Affordable Connectivity Program, you have to prove that you are a Pell recipient or that you receive some other type of funding. All of those things on the internet, or cannot, or yeah, I might have a phone, but it's not mobile friendly. And so someone still has to be able to jump through hoops to prove that they're poor to be able to get access to service that they may or may not choose to pay for. So I think as we think about affordability, we do need to think about the barriers that we put in place to prevent someone from getting that access.
So I know in Connect America, when they did it in Louisiana, it was Title I schools, I think it was. So it didn't matter if you received free or reduced lunch or not. If your school was considered in that area, then all children had access to 995 internet, which relieves some of the barriers. And then in government housing, if you were a senior citizen that lived in government subsidized housing or someone that lived in government subsidized housing, it was afforded to you 995 internet access. And so it was a challenge to some of the bigger internet providers, but it alleviated just what you just said. Because you lived there, because they were able to ping you there, you were able to get it. But because your child went to this particular school, they were able to get it. That's policy though, and that's something that we could easily take back as, a suggestion to go back. It's been done. Let's just see how we could bring it back forward.
Any other, because I got 6 more questions. Any other?
I was gonna say, if you
get your voice heard, please make sure that you can answer it through the QR code up there on the website too. Because I know we spoke a lot and a lot of voices. And also one other thing, for everyone who's on the webinar, they're not able to see us or know who we are, so just keep remembering, I think you're doing a good job. Just introduce yourself every time so that people watching at home know who's speaking. Okay.
So I think the next question is, well, we just talked about that. Are there specific
Sort of like
barriers?
this one.
And then so the next after this one is, are there unique digital equity barriers facing certain populations in your community? We discussed that.
I mean, let's take a time out. Okay. So the previous question was resources. I think we sort of ish. Well, the last two questions are on barriers, and I think we started talking about the barriers. But let's dive deeper, right? Because it's not just barriers impacting Latino populations, African American people, I mean, the Vietnamese population, especially in this area, the Asian population, the disabled population, senior citizens. I mean, it's all sorts of folks. Okay, so I think we had a couple of questions, and then I really want to dive deep on the barriers based on the conversations you had and working with different segments of the communities. Yes.
Hi, my name is Rowan Lambert. I'm a student at the University of Maryland. I also get to provide statistics and big numbers for you all. I know for me, one of the barriers as a student is actually the administration. I spoke to an IT person in Sheffield about the internet access at Babineaux, and that most of the buildings, their AP routers are 10 years old. And right now, our school is looking to fund the football stadium and the football team is kind of okay, but I'm trying to get my work done and I can't. The internet goes out all the time, so I just wanted to provide that with that. A lot of the times it's the administration itself who doesn't allocate funds to it.
So the answer to your question is, universities and community colleges, anything that's public education, are as community anchor institutions as part of the infrastructure bill. And so, which means they are prioritized. It's really three groups that are, I'm going to broadly speaking, prioritize that we have to federally fund, ensure they have access to the high school affordable internet. It's the unserved, then the underserved, and then community anchors, which schools, public safety. I mean, you've heard stories throughout the state where police departments in small towns don't have access. They're still using this walkie-talkies or whatever, CB radio, which is an issue. So schools, public safety, healthcare, libraries, those kinds of critical community institutions are going to be covered. Now, it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when. Whether it's now, 6 months, it'll be a little bit of a process, but
It just seems like we keep pushing back the stuff that actually needs to be fixed infrastructure-wise, which
I will not litigate that. Yeah.
Sometimes on campus where the internet's out.
Exactly. Okay. There are some other barriers. Yeah.
I will just say language barriers are a real problem, and I don't know if anybody's tried to teach a digital literacy class to people who are non-native English speakers. It's an extra level of difficult. And so I think in our public services, those of us that are offering services to folks who really need to think about how we address language barriers in our promotional material and when people sign up for things. And so that is a big part of getting to even being able to address digital equity.
Yeah.
Let me.
I mean, these are things that I think everyone can say, but just to say that, and I'm Annalise Kelly with Jetco. A lot of the things that would make it challenging to even get to work in a physical place would also make it challenging to get to classes that are taught physically, which, you know, would be the case if you have a challenge with internet access, you can't do a virtual class. So public transportation for sure, and then childcare. Really big.
So again, and then just look, these are the organizations we're gonna have to engage with over the next several months, okay? So it's not gonna just stop here and then we're done. So think about it from the perspective of folks that represent or live in these areas or what have you, right? And so as much as we can talk about, again, barriers, we're gonna keep the slide up. So as we think about barriers, you know, view it as much as you can from the perspective of these folks. Yeah.
Ricardo, just real quickly, when we talk about barriers, one of the things I'd like to see is, I think, is the leadership. And when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about coming from the state, you know, Governor Edwards speaking more on this. I know he did a couple of things around the state and stuff, but pushing that out to the local parishes and the community council people and all of the different administrations to make this a priority issue. I haven't really seen that across the state, maybe randomly, but I mean, I'd like to see a lot more involved with that so that this is at the forefront and as people are hearing this, so that the communities, the parishes, the leadership in the parishes are taking this seriously. Not just what I call lip service and, hey, this is what we're doing, but hey, this is a direction we're going to drive Louisiana to be next level, you know?
Right.
So I do work for the governor, so I am here. So, yeah, report to him, Commissioner Delgado. So, when I have my one-on-one with them, I will bring it up. Look, we're actually very fortunate as a state, and I know the part you were saying, a lot of states in the Northeast. I want to be brutally honest, and you may say, look, you're being a little bit too, maybe building castles here. As a state, and I can't litigate what happened 10 years ago, or 12 years ago in 2008, but as a state, the feds recognize that we're probably the top 3 in terms of how aggressive we're trying to attack this issue. 18 months ago, there was no office. And we've already committed 170 million. And there's already a groundbreaking of a project that's going to probably finish in St. Martinville, in St. Martin Parish, probably within the next 3 to 6 months. So the feds, which is really FCC, US Treasury, and Commerce, all like beneath. You guys, and really it's because we have really good alignment across the board, conversations like this all have put us actually, from their perspective, in a leadership position. So Texas and frankly other states in the Northeast are like, what are we doing to create alignment? And part of it is these kinds of conversations. So I just want to, you're gonna like, okay, so roll your eyes and so what? But really, you know, honestly speaking, that's the feedback we get from what's it best.
I mean, the reason I'm mentioning this is that we have a digital inclusion at the parish level,
yeah,
and digital committee and all that, but not once have I heard them talk about any of this.
Well, then let's try to fix it.
Have to go pick up the phone and say, hey guys, call every parish president, hey, this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. Get involved. I hate working a lot, right? He carries weight, so picking up the phone, you can't make them do that, but you just like when they coordinate the hurricanes and all that, you could do that same process.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, to your point, Louisiana, from my perspective, I had calls with the Fed. They were like, oh, Louisiana's already announced that they're doing stakeholder events and they've got a, you know, and that is uncommon across the state at this point for this massive grant project.
So look, I can't litigate what's happening in the past. I can only focus on actualities. And so, you know, you've got our entire office of 3, Thomas, David, and I. So that should speak to the importance of this kind of stuff. Move now into the future.
Hey everybody, I'm Elizabeth Fresh. I'm here actually wearing 2 hats. I am the administrative leader for Healthy State by 2030, and I am directly employed by Option Health. So my sort of lens for digital equity is really within the context of health equity. program, and that chronic condition remote monitoring capability. And one of those barriers is affordability of the blood pressure cuff, or the glucometer, that you need to check your blood sugars, and our ability to administer medical support and meet patients where they are, and not force them to come into the four walls of our clinic is actually a really critical component to improving health outcomes. So I did want to put that out there. It's something that Osher's working with the state on. It's something, hundreds of conversations are having all the time about how you make it affordable. But unless you have a smartphone, we can't help you with your digital medicine program. Even if we give you devices for free, which we do for uninsured populations. So that's one barrier I want to put out there. And then the other barrier is, when folks come to us for clinical support, a lot of times the folks who need it most, clinic hours aren't available when they really need them. The emergency room, that's not the ideal setting for this type of care provision. We have looked into and have started hiring and training community health workers to support more of those determinate needs, but it's not happening fast. And it's not something that's supported in a sustainable business model either. It's not a service that they charge an insurance for. That's something that we do because we recognize food insecurity is going to have a large role to play in your health outcomes. And how do you apply for SNAP support? It's got to be online. And so we're training our community health workers to help patients when they present to share this information with us to actually help them. So that's just another way that digital equity and broadband access continue to be a super social determinant of health. And that's the way that we're looking at it from a healthy state perspective, statewide.
Yes.
Following up, I'm a cardiovascular surgeon. I practice in the western part of the Louisiana Delta in the North Washington Parish. And the rural issue, particularly the disparity is profoundly growing. Right now, if you put a Medtronic pacer in the patient who is in the Delta that you monitor with Internet of Things, like, there's no access at all. So fundamental infrastructure, particularly in the rural parts of the state, is critical. It's just the disparity is just going to get worse. It's going to be worse in rural than urban.
Right. So what's going to happen is this: with our federal funds, we're going to prioritize those areas first. So what you're going to see is, for the first time, people that really don't have any access to internet, so folks that have less than 25, 3, 20, it's really the speed of data transmission, 25 download, 3 upload. They're going to be prioritized, and they're going to actually have probably the next 2 years, for a significant number of folks, better internet than the people that live in that. Because that's who we're prioritizing. So, and look, we travel throughout the state. We've been in, last 2 weeks we were in DeSoto, Bienville, all sorts of places in Lakewood. And so we understand the sizing of the broadband issues. Yes.
I just, Izzy and I are doing public library. I noticed on the chart one of the population is currently formerly incarcerated people, and I just wanted to point out that those populations have significant barriers. We just finally finalized the program where we're going to the day reporting center at the sheriff's office once a week to help people, and we've been trying for months to get something going with the actual with the jail, but there's so many barriers to the technology that they allow inside the jails. They have to be really locked down. And my colleague and I were talking with someone at the GNO Summit a few weeks ago. I think they were from Baton Rouge, and they have a similar issue. So that population has just so many factors against them when they come out, and when they're incarcerated, between the lack of technical skills, the lack of access to devices, and then having, like, when you're finding a job, having to also have that, have to report the felony or whatever on your job application.
Yeah, so this industry is very, 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 very top male heavy, right? The construction maintenance, and operations of these networks. We think we're gonna need 5,000 people just to construct a lot of these networks, which means we need people across the entirety of this board to help fill that gap. And so we're talking to folks that are recently incarcerated, because I know the Bossier Parish Community College is trying to bring, they're working with actually, I think the Department of Corrections in a couple of areas in Northwest Louisiana to start with fiber optic splicing classes and some fiber. But yes, that's going to be, and Delgado's is really stepping up in terms of trying to address the broadband supply issue from a workforce perspective. Let me just walk you very quickly on timing, because again, I want to go back to this. October 21st, last Friday, we issued 69 grant agreements for projects to impact probably 80,000 addresses throughout the state. Those companies have till November 21st to submit those grants. Once those grants are signed, that's when they're on the clock. They're either on the clock to build in 2 years, 18 months, 12 months, 6 months, whatnot. So we're going to have to sprint with them and with the community colleges once these grants get signed, understand if they're building in a parish in this area or wherever, how many people they think they're going to need to hire to work with the local community colleges. But this, like, understanding what the barriers are for folks that, we need to provide second chances to, something that we need to know more about. Okay. Any other on barriers? Any other thoughts? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a graduate student, and I want to raise the specific regional barrier of hurricane and climate change in the region, how it's going to impact internet infrastructure. Because it's just going to, it's going to create like time, and whether it's like hours, days, months of no internet access, and how that might affect digital equity or how that's framed. And there's like times when there's just like no internet, or there's no electricity, and then there's like no internet, and how that might be factored into like overall maintenance of infrastructure, and then how to hold like ISPs accountable for not raising prices after the storms, because they're not kind of being regulated as utilities, so making sure that pricing kind of stays affordable, even if they're like facing the burden of taking on the cost of maintenance. So just wanted to bring that as a very specific regional barrier. Yeah.
Any other barriers? Okay.
So next question.
The next question is about existing digital equity plans. So does your community, business, or organization have a digital equity plan in place or under development?
The answer is no, that's okay. So we're doing this at the state level. Any of y'all have something that's more locally focused? Yes.
This is Annalise with Jeffrey. I'll just say we have a long-term economic development plan for Parish for the Jefferson Edge, and it's not just Jeffco's plan, it's Jefferson Parish's plan, the Bailey Council opposite. And we have as a goal and like a principle, a guiding principle to ensure better universal access to broadband internet, which is not just infrastructure, but affordability and digital literacy. And it's something that we've talked with Jen and others about how to do. We haven't actually created anything yet, but I would say it's a goal of the parishes. I would really love to talk to partners like you all about how we can ensure that actually happens.
Also, can you just put that question up for the people on the YouTube? Community, business, or organization.
So the answer So you're doing it sort of on the regional. Anyone else?
Hey, Catherine again, I'm with the City of New Orleans. Our IT department has a digital equity department, and we work on digital skills training, device donation, and we are revisiting our strategy to incorporate the pillars, very much like the pillars.
So you actually have someone, let's say, city employee that's tasked to do digital equity.
Yes. We want to add more and partner with the library again. We did once, but we have to revisit that and get that.
Osher has healthcare hubs. You guys may have seen one in Side Mall. We closed it down during COVID for part of the time, but that's definitely a resource where you can go and play with iPads, learn about different types of health apps, and get help even setting up your own personal digital medicine devices. So that's one program that continues. We have mobile OBARs as well. We've been in different communities to the same type of support.
And the New Orleans Public Library's 10-year strategic plan, which just come out, has an objective for digital literacy.
Okay.
So what supports does the community need to address digital equity gaps in the community?
I'm just gonna go back to the infrastructure piece, which is huge. I think that is gonna be the crux of the matter. We're making sure we have those lines in place, because that's the only way you'll be able to actually access those areas. And even maybe, there are some other cell phone providers like Verizon doing the same, I think satellite base. If we don't have the ability to lay them, especially for some hard to reach areas, where Verizon is doing that $50 something, it's not in platinum yet. They keep advertising for it, but maybe working with some non-traditional partners to make sure that we have multiple ways of getting the internet to communities. Some ways they work in one area, some ways they work in another. There's having a multifaceted approach.
The whole access and then being able to use it thing is a fun chicken and egg question. But I think like cataloging what kinds of resources are out there already for either one-on-one and more targeted instruction in digital literacy or navigation or sort of whole group things would make sense. And then honestly, as people get access, if they're going through state programs, if they're getting discounts, can we send them through the ISP? Like, welcome to the internet, here's how you can scale up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a conversation we can have with the ISPs.
Yeah, because.
Look, it's to their benefit that people get skilled up.
And use their devices and their.
Correct. So they understand that.
Right, but it would be on us to sort of coordinate the network of opportunity out there.
Yeah.
Ricardo, the library, just one thing about digital equity gaps, I was making a note here. You know, I don't think inclusion is enough. I think we really have to have a culture of dignity and how this is an approach to that gap in that, because I've seen, you know, being now on the front lines, as they say, you know, it's just, you have to be patient, you have to be understanding, you know, and I've seen all different groups across all different state organization, workforce development, all kind of stuff, you know, and it really has to be a change in culture about how we're addressing these needs.
So,
and I don't know what the answer is.
So I was going to ask you anyway. Who would be the best people you think can help drive that culture in an increasingly impatient world?
I mean,
So we don't have.
I guess, I mean, thinking about this, you know, there's a faith organization here that reaches out to computer digital literacy. I'm trying to think of the community, right, airline. Hollygrove. So they're the digital literacy lab to teach, you know, low income and folks there, and they're patient people that are providing the services. I mean, I just think that there has to be thinking about that because, you know, we're all more affluent communities and people have money and that disparity in income really plays well because most people can say, oh, I can just go do this or I can do that. People that don't have that, you know, tend to get pushed aside, and people that have the money or providing that service is like, what, you know, I gotta help you do this.
Okay, we'll go to Aaron, then
Yeah.
Doctor, then.
To that point, my answer is always going to be about education, but I will say it's not a community of practice, but it's been supported anyway, because it's not a network, right? So it's a type of instruction that we have not, as a society, done explicitly. It just pops up in different places.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to have a space where we share, this is how you teach this. This is how you teach this to a group that are not English speakers. This is how you teach this to folks who are, you know, older and terrified of this, but really want to be able to use it. And it's a type of instruction that we work on together.
Just thank you for that comment. I was just going to say, part of what's happening here is this infrastructure is replacing physical infrastructure that's formerly been in the complete ownership and management of the state. The internet is a new kind of pavement, a new kind of highway. And we would never turn our highways over to a bunch of private companies. And yet now we find ourselves in this situation. And I mean, this is, and the growing gap is exemplified by the fact that look who the biggest billionaires and most billionaires are. They're the people that own and manage this growing infrastructure. You used to go to the post office for a money order. Now you use PayPal. The man that owns PayPal just launched a rocket into space. Only 6 other countries can do that. That's the transition of our economy and the growing disparity and the fundamental 30,000 policy need of what's we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a policy that I will, that's a policy discussion that. But no, I get it.
I just want to give you a framework.
No, I get it.
What we're,
It's
these are the foundations of every area you're talking about. Private equity will not drive a fire department or a police department. But we're trying to drive hospitals and information. Right.
I just have a specific suggestion. There's going to be a lot of money for digital literacy programs. I would just suggest allowing creative use of the budget. I'm thinking about like how it could potentially, like if there could be, when an organization like the library has a program, how, you know, if they could provide meals and partner with them to provide childcare, instead of hierarchy of needs, someone's going to prioritize their kid and their meal over going to the literacy class. But if there could be a holistic look at like, hey, there's going to be food provided and we'll have childcare on site, that makes it so much easier. So just think that creative partnerships and stuff.
As we move, so as we move forward into this now, and again, this will be a long-term thing. Start thinking now if you can, okay, it doesn't have to be 100,000, right, on creative pilots with different organizations. So, you know, we're a team of 3, literally 1, 2, 3 people, and 2 student interns that's going to manage the spend of $1.5 billion, $2 billion. The reason why we've been able to move as quickly as we can is for us, process improvement is always important. So we listen from folks like you guys, we quickly iterate, and then we keep moving. So it's really taking that minimum viable product approach, which is let's not make perfect, ready, good, let's start pushing stuff out. learn, and then keep iterating. So I need you to start thinking about what those kinds of interventions are to help us address issues around digital equity, whether it's device, education, workforce, or what have you. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Yes, ma'am.
This is Emily with Delgado Community College. I also spent about 15 years in higher ed teaching English composition courses. And I think we need to go back, especially in K-12, but also in community colleges and universities across the state, and look at curriculum. Because in our English work composition and rhetoric classes, we don't have to take a focus on digital literacy that should be there from the beginning, from kindergarten on. Because as these kids grow, right, it's more important that they can understand digital literacy skills and even rhetoric online than it is for them to be able to write a paragraph on paper. And I don't think all of our educators are on board with that thought.
Yes, if you think about it organically, my wife, she's an educator. Thomas's wife is an educator. My wife, kids are born with a device, what, at age 2, 3, 4. I mean, they're looking at something. So, I mean, to your point, that's an interesting thought process in terms of, I would say curriculum redesign, but incorporating in a way that these skills are embedded throughout from elementary.
Well, you bring up that part, and I would jump to the other side of that argument and say, we don't want a 2-year-old necessarily spending all of their time on a device. And that's a bigger question that we're kind of posing to the nation as a whole is what are the unintended consequences of connecting all of these unserved people? One of which is we have to make sure, just a small portion of it is making sure the parents who are now learning how to use these devices don't just throw it on iPad at their kids and say, here, go have fun. Because that's the last thing you really want the parents to do. You want to be educated in the fact that, yes, it's a tool for your children to use, but you don't want to then increase their screen time by 500%. So it's an interesting dichotomy when you look at it, but it's something that we have to consider because there's a lot of new people that are going to want to do that. And we have to make sure that the proper understanding is there not.
I mean, because let's be honest, the unintended consequences of doing all this stuff, it's going to be increased, and you're a healthcare professional, it's going to be increased mental health issues, increased isolationism, increased people going down different methods. Cybersecurity, DDoS. I mean, especially for the older population that lives in a rural area that gets an email that says something .gov.
We're going to classes on protect yourself.
Yeah, and so that's something we're going to have to.
I think it's important to discuss those issues in terms of socioeconomic impacts.
Yeah.
Because many of those issues you discuss impact the wealthy just as well as the poor.
Right.
But the problem of a parent, 2-year-old has to do with access to childcare for poor. So we can't put all those problems in the same basket.
No, right, and that's why we're not. So we're not generalizing. Those are segmented issues that we have to.
But when we're talking about these issues, these are the types of issues that can be addressed in programming in K-12 specifically, so that we don't continue this digital gap where we're trying to train people as adults when we could have caught them at a much younger age, right? So we really need to go back and look at that curriculum, or maybe even work in a separate digital literacy class, right? That's a mandatory required component of K-12 education.
How do we rank in terms of other countries, in terms of digital?
Carl, I'm just focused on Louisiana.
Doing badly compared to other countries, and specifically our young people are doing worse than young people in other countries.
Moving on.
Yeah, let's move on. Yes.
Well, now I have 2 things to say. There's a whole nother conversation. But to all of that, I think we need to get away from that myth that, the kids, they know how to use it. They're the masters of the technology. They're not. And they know how to download it, but they don't have the digital skills. And so that's really important. But going back to how we roll out any sort
class in teaching people skills, Louisiana has a model that's been very successful in public libraries in passing on programming that instills early literacy, but family literacy, more, not so much how to read, but how to develop that habit and culture of reading, prime time family reading time. It's been around for like 20 years. And the way that model works and why it's so successful is that there is, in addition to the public library, there's a community organizer, someone embedded in the community that's trying to reach. And if that is a Spanish-speaking community or another, because I think we have Navajo, it's become national. That community organizer is bilingual in that language. And then at the library, there is a resource to provide transportation if the families need it, because it's usually offered on like at 6 or 6:30 in the evening. So there's transportation if they need it. There is childcare for, the program is for first through like 4th grade. So there's childcare for the preschoolers. And there's either a significant snack or a meal. When we did prime time, we offered full meals. We had some money, but we also got, the community really provided meals. It was really great. And having all of those components is what made that program successful. So I think that could be a model for other kinds of things that we're.
Rebecca Kelly, we're Regents in this library. I wanted to just add on Ricardo's library and there's part of our pilot that we're working with 5 libraries across the state. We're testing out some different programming. And we've had several ideas that have come out of that. So we're going to be during this next year testing these out. But one of them, like Rapides Parish during the summer, had a program similar to what you're talking about, where the kids would come in for like some type of fun activity, they would feed the kids. And so she's thinking next summer of having like classes for the parents that are there with their kids, give parents something to do. There's childcare in a way, and there's food and a feed, so it's kind of combining everything. And then something that I've been really thinking about is like Jefferson Parish and New Orleans Parish, you guys have a good bit of resources that some of our smaller public libraries that are in our rural parishes that don't have the budget to be able to take on, or the staff to take on some of this. One of the things, the challenges that I'm seeing is the hours that the libraries are able to stay open. And this would cross over to other types of organizations, not just libraries, other organizations. They're operating during that 8 to 5 window. Maybe the people that need to take those classes can only take them in the evening hours or on the weekend. And some of these libraries are closed on the weekend. They don't have the staff and resources to be open on the weekend. And so I'm hoping that there will be funding that will help with that. They can apply to get additional funding, but we really need to push back on those local governments to try to see if there's a way that they can better support their local organizations. And then finally, just to add on another thing that I don't feel like it's talked enough about, but we've briefly mentioned it, is the device issue, because if they don't have a device, then signing up to take a class to learn how to use the device, and they go home and they don't have a device, they're not going to retain what they learn if they don't get to use it. And so I wonder if there are opportunities for private-public partnerships in some way, like, I don't know, like businesses to donate a device or some type of program.
You should get the companies that are Jetco, part of it. No, really, I just think.
I just thought there's an opportunity there to help their.
Well, companies are struggling to find a role. They want, the conversations we have with companies is they want to play a role. But they're like, help me define what that role is. And so if it means, refurbished devices, what have you, that's something we can do on these guys. So I know we got.
Devices is also a program where you can have 2 years technical service. If they come up against something, they call them up and they help them.
Is that through the capital area doing that?
We did for one time, yeah.
Okay,
But it's not very many in the state of Louisiana that right? That's another option.
But you go through text too.
But I just thought there's not.
Okay.
One in that range, I think.
We need 200,000 devices. I know we've got a couple of minutes left, and I know this is the last question, and so I know a lot of the challenges around has been engagement and communications. This is the question, right? As we work to address digital equity, are there specific modes of communication that we should consider to reach different stakeholders? Yes, ma'am.
I think we should definitely be working with our nonprofits, our churches, and community organizations, our local libraries, community colleges, but also our state agencies that hold the resources these people need every day. And I think that's an underused area, from flyers, right, to email disc lists, right, but then word of mouth, having everybody mention it, and everybody handle this. Because that's the only way to do it.
I mean, I think this requires a very much a ground game.
Absolutely.
That's what we learned.
Public transportation.
Oh, yeah. And our rec centers are really great for that here in our north.
I'd say physical places where people go frequently, grocery stores. But yeah, like private businesses where people go. We often, I know working in government, when we do public outreach meetings, we always do civic centers, community centers, schools, and libraries. They're great because it's something a lot of people get to, but I sometimes think it'd be good to have partnerships with businesses that people are going to.
So help me think through those solutions. Right? So if a certain venue makes really good sense, like what is the tactic? What is, like if I were to approach a rec center somewhere, if they're a great potential source to amplify anything, and they're like, yes, I'm in, but what is it that I'm asking you to do? It's just something, I'm asking a sort of rhetorical question, but I'm looking for suggestions and thoughts.
Showing up at festivals with geofencing advertisements, right? Facebook ads, social media ads, flyers and handouts.
Interesting. Okay.
We did all the festivals, and we had tons of people sign up for digital literature classes, but we had to have salsa classes, bachata classes. We had to bring them in, give them giveaways, free this.
Yeah.
Something that I just wanted to get back on what Marty said, he didn't mention this, but when he was telling me about the outreach at the festival, community outreach, they reached a lot of people that didn't even know about the library.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like this is a population, if they didn't know the library was some resources, then they didn't know.
Yeah.
They were signing up for the classes, but they were getting library cards, like they didn't even know about the library.
That blew my mind.
Okay. We've heard that a number of places. We heard radio, even in Alexandria, different thematic radio stations.
We're getting ready to put an ad in Spanish on the radio for the first time.
Okay. Anything else for? Here? Churches.
And schools.
We have to forget that it's digital, because usually the outreach has to be almost on it.
Part of it, I think part of this communication challenge is, what we've learned is that there are folks in different parts of the state, in the conversations we've been having, that are actually doing something that people are not aware of. So that's one barrier. At least we need to get people up to speed on who's doing what, where at a minimum. And then we need to continue to pound that message every other day, kind of thing, right? Then, once we have done that, just start to then really focus on very specific things based on the population.
One group that I know that we don't want to touch on, but it was just brought to our attention, bankers, because they are pushing to.
Oh, yeah, bankers, so great.
But they are
You were the
pushing
first
towards
one to talk about
online, and their senior citizens, that's a population that's like, I'm not doing that, I don't want to do that. And so they should be at the table as well, because they also have to do to reinvestment act money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're having conversations with them on how we can engage state community banks in the state for participating with Community Reinvestment Act or digital equity. They are big on that, and they want to help push that out across the state. Another thing that's important to consider as we look at that is how we can approach the unbanked or the underbanked for these communities. So that's another thing we'll be talking to bankers about. We've invited, I think it's bank on programs that United Way has that I actually had an email about follow up with the girl to get a meeting scheduled because we want to push that with a lot of these community banks. It makes sense.
So I know we're going to wrap up. I've got a homework assignment. Oh, yes, sir.
More and more so with the open parish school. The school should be a simple community. It's totally underutilized in the whole nation. We should be open on Saturday, possibly Sunday, evening for parents, evening for adult classes. Totally underutilized resources. I say, make it perform.
Thank you. So I got homework assignment for whoever, right? So that list of the red blocks, right? So we've had a really good conversation. I need to take it deeper with the different groups. So if y'all can work with the folks here at Delgado or the planning commission here, now you can help us with, those. I'm gonna hand it over to you on the input, but those organizations like veterans organizations and folks that live in low moderate income housing. Help me if you want to bring together 3, 4, 5 people that represent those different organizations and say, hey, let's do a deeper dive on the challenges that they may have. Then we're happy to come and facilitate and have those conversations. Because I just think, like, I have no idea, not totally, but I have no idea the challenges these folks are having really at a granular level, right? And so any help that we can get over the next several months would be greatly appreciated, or have people submit feedback as much as they can. All right. Like that ideal market, there's one in Baton Rouge that just opened up that's so popular. I forgot about that.
Honestly, all of this information is provided in Spanish. Over there is the money order process.
And I learned a lot about it, but they do money.
Very good idea.
It's a great idea.
Where there is a money order process. I'm going to do this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming and giving your input. We would like you to take this, the online form back to the community. I think we also have some paper forms. And kind of so that we can get more information and really get more voices heard and from the people who have struggled to get internet for a long time.
You said, can we make this link available to our community?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, push it out as much as you can. The more feedback we get, the better.
Okay.
Typically, it takes about 7 to 11 minutes to take. So,
Oh, we have taken up.
yeah, take it as a class. I mean, and look, we know the paper people feel more comfortable. So as much as you can, if you need a paper copy, it sure is that.
How do we submit the paper copies? Mail them, scan them?
Email. You can, I would say the best is maybe to scan them and we can email them to Blanco Center.
Okay.
All right.
And